still can't get over that suit. So cool.
Gotta be me.
Yeah, you do.
Pete, does this job ever get easier?
Some of it, yeah. Some things never get easier, though.
Roxxon did this uptown because they saw us as disposable. Me, Rick, Finn, all of Harlem. I think part of our job is making sure they can't get away with it.
We'll add it to the Spider-Man oath. Go time?
Go time.
It's a no-brainer that Insomniac Games is 2 for 2 with the great Spider-Man games, with both Marvel's Spider-Man and its spin-off/sequel, Spider-Man Miles Morales, being great in terms of story, gameplay, and so much more. So where do you go from here? We know for sure that Peter is definitely going to get the black suit, and people want to play as Miles more. So what I'm going to do is just list off ideas that I have for the sequel. Things like story, gameplay, and just some other stuff, nothing too crazy. And with the recent release of the teaser trailer, I feel like now is a good time to finally make this video. This isn't really a prediction, more of a brainstorm. So, let's start with something simple.
Where am I?
The black suit. So, at the end of each game in their end credit scenes, we find out that Harry Osborn never actually left for Europe. That was just a cover so Norman Osborn could put him in some kind of stasis chamber with some weird, strange black substance. And at the end of Spider-Man Miles Morales, he tells Dr. Connors, aka the Lizard, to let him out. So when we all saw that, we all knew that that was how the symbiote was going to be introduced. And it appears to be more of a man-made substance instead of an alien, evil parasite thing. Though they could retcon that and say they found it in a meteorite. So here are my ideas for how Peter gets the suit, the gameplay elements, and how he loses the suit, and some other ideas I have. If you remember in the first game, when you break into Oscorp, you overhear a conversation between Norman and Kingpin. It turns out that the two of them were working together to keep the Devil's Breath hidden and in the city of New York. So, basically to keep the heat off his back, Norman Osborn could say that the whole thing was Kingpin's idea, at least keeping it in the city. So, it keeps the heat off Norman's back while adding more to Kingpin's. In response, Fisk sends some of his goons to go steal Harry, which is eventually stopped by Peter. As a result of this fight, the chamber that is holding Harry is damaged and he needs to be released. And the black substance is just vanished, and attaches itself to Peter without anyone knowing. Later on that night, he goes to bed and kind of has a weird dream sequence where he fights this dark figure he can't really understand. And this is a boss fight you cannot win no matter what you do. After losing that boss fight, you wake up and you find yourself in the black suit, hanging upside down. Very similar to the 1994 animated TV show and Spider-Man 3. Peter is wondering how he got this suit when his train of thought is interrupted by someone getting attacked. And right then you go to save the day and we learn the main differences between the red suit and the black suit. While you're wearing the black suit, your focus bar takes twice as long to charge because it's a lot harder to focus when you're angry. But the good thing is, if you're fighting brutes, people with miniguns, swords, whips, all those things, you only need one bar of focus to take them down. Alternatively, your focus bar could turn to a rage meter, very similar to what happens in Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Also, when you have the black suit on, you can't use any of your extra gadgets, but you do have extra web shooter storage, so there's a bit of a balance. While swinging in the black suit, your speed is increased to keep up with Miles' Venom Jump and Venom Dash, and whatever else they add. Also, like in the game Spider-Man Web of Shadows, you can switch between the red suit and the black suit with the touch of a button, which would be really cool for photo mode. But there isn't going to be any like red option, black option for, alternate stories. There's just one basic story, and that's it. With alternate suits, there are two ways I can see them tackling this. Number one, every single alternate suit just uses the advanced black suit. But this is Insomniac, so I think they will go above and beyond, where each alternate suit has its own symbiote shader. Like, the classic suit has a classic symbiote, the Raimi suit has a Raimi symbiote, and suits like the Homecoming suit or the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit get their own exclusive symbiote look. But though some suits like the Big Time suit and the Dark suit are already black, so I would forgive them if they used the advanced black suit for those ones. How I see Peter losing the black suit will go like this. Both MJ and Miles have both noticed that Peter has kinda gotten a little more hot-headed and angry ever since he got this new black suit. Peter tells them, no, I'm fine, I have control over this, it's okay. When suddenly, they are interrupted by a news broadcast. Screwball has taken a bus full of people hostage and is challenging both Spider-Men to an internet challenge. Peter and Miles go to save them, and unfortunately, one of the hostages is an elderly woman, and at the end of the fight, she begins to have a heart attack. To Peter, this old woman looks a lot like Aunt May. And Screwball's just laughing it off, thinking, oh, think of the views. This causes Peter to snap and attack Screwball. Think of it very similar to what Superior Spider-Man did in his comic book run. And this is a quick-time event. You have control of this beatdown that you're about to lay onto Screwball. And, you know, not a lot of people really liked Screwball in the last game, so very similar to how Peter's feeling, you're enjoying it, but you're being a little bit brutal with this. And at the end, you are holding Screwball by the neck. Peter's mouth begins to open with razor-sharp fangs, as Venom says, I'm going to kill you. Before he does, he's stopped by Miles with a Venom punch, and he uses his Venom powers to restart the woman's heart, saving her life. Miles then has a speech calling Peter out about his recent reckless actions and telling him that that suit needs to go. Peter, after being hit with that Venom strike and the symbiote being disrupted, he has a little bit more of a clear head and realizes, oh my gosh, you're right, I need to get out of here, and just runs away and is followed by Miles. You're in control of Miles and you chase Peter off into a churchyard. You Venom strike the bell to disrupt the symbiote, and it's basically just a boss fight between Miles and symbiote-controlled Peter. At the end of the boss fight, it's then back to the Mindscape when Peter got the first black suit, but instead, the dark figure is now just the symbiote suit. Think of it very similar to what they did with Spectacular Spider-Man and the black suit, but instead of Uncle Ben, it's Aunt May, reassuring him that her dying was okay and it's what she wanted, and she forgives Peter, therefore Peter forgives himself for letting her die, and defeats the black suit. Peter then defeats the evil version of himself and the symbiote escapes, both of them thinking it's destroyed, where in actuality, the symbiote goes back to Harry and he becomes Venom. Another weakness when you're wearing the black suit is if you're attacked by anything with fire or a sonic-based attack, the symbiote retreats into you and you're wearing the red suit for a certain amount of time. And after the end of the game, you get access to the symbiote shader. You still have all the powers of your classic suit, but you can still wear the black suit for suits that you haven't unlocked yet. So, now that we've covered everything about the black suit, let's talk about the gameplay differences between Peter and Miles. One of the things people loved about Miles Morales the video game was, even though it had a lot of similar elements, they spiced it up a little bit so it still felt fresh. The way Miles swung, interacted with the city, and the combat, so let's keep building on that. For traversal, I have the feeling that Miles is going to be faster with his Venom Jump and Venom Dash, but Peter's going to be better in a fight because he has more experience and more gadgets than Miles does. And with the teaser trailer, I think that's going to be the case, but with Peter having extra arms and Miles having new Venom powers. And I think when you have the black suit on, those robot arms become tendrils. I think that would be cool. And I saw in the trailer that Miles has a new blue electricity power, so that's either supercharged attack, or it's absorbing energy and redirecting it for defensive purposes, and I think that'd be pretty cool. In terms of the stealth portions of the game, with Miles' camo and Peter's new black suit, there isn't really a whole lot they can add, other than just new enemy types, making it a little more challenging so you don't have to just run in and punch everything, you have to think things out, and a few new takedown animations. Something I think they could add is stuff from Batman Arkham Knight's dual team mechanics. There are going to be points in the game where you play as both Peter and Miles in combat or stealth, and you can switch between them with a press of a button, or to take down one enemy with the two Spider-Men. For free roaming, if you want to switch between Peter and Miles, all you have to do is just go to the menu and press a button, very similar to how you change the weather in Miles Morales. And now we got that out of the way, let's talk about some things that they can add in terms of gameplay, mainly web swinging. Some of these new ideas include a new way of fast traveling besides the train system, and it takes inspiration from the video game tie-in for Spider-Man 3. In that game, there are a few places where you can just swing 2 webs and pull yourself back for a slingshot. And with the power of the PS5, that would be a great way to show off its power. Another new thing they could add from a previous game, Spider-Man Web of Shadows, is the ability to climb up your web line to add a little bit more height and just do more cool stuff for photo mode. 2 last things they could add before we move on is new air tricks. Don't be afraid to go crazy with it, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, just go nuts. And number 2, something interesting that was added in Fortnite, of all things, is the ability to swing a web on the back of a vehicle and just ride behind it. You could do that with cars, boats, and helicopters, basically just wakeboarding behind it, and I think that would be really interesting to add. So, the next thing I want to talk about is something we all loved about the last 2 games.
Feeling like a wardrobe change. Been there, worn that. Yes, now that's a suit.
Alternate costumes. One of the best things about the last 2 games was how they handled how you unlock alternate suits. Each suit was locked behind a paywall of tokens, and you get those tokens by completing side activities like challenges, collecting backpacks, and stopping crimes. And when you unlock that suit, you unlock its suit power, and you could take that and put it into a different costume. For example, you could take the electric punch and put it to the homemade homecoming suit, which incentivizes you to complete the game 100% to unlock all the alternate costumes. The first problem we're going to run into, though, is that Miles doesn't have as many costumes as Peter does. Insomniac fixes this by using their own alternate suits or using variant covers, which is awesome. Now, each person has their own set of suits, which is over a dozen. How do you go about unlocking them? An idea I have is that they do share some suits, like their Spider-Verse or their classic suits. When you unlock it for one, you unlock it for the other. For example, if you're playing as Peter and you buy the $20.99 suit, you instantly unlock it for Miles, so you don't have to go play as Miles, grind out tokens, and then unlock it for him. But each spider will have their own exclusive alternative suits, so you do have reason to switch in between. And I'm gonna assume that a lot of suits from the last 2 games are gonna come back, so let's give an incentive to have them coming back. Basically, I think they can just add a little bit of variety. For example, the Big Time suit not only has a green setting, but also has red and blue. And some suits have hoods, so taking the hood on or off. Even the Noir suit has a trench coat and a fedora sometimes. So, fedora on, trench coat on, whatever you want. Going back to a symbiote shader, which I mentioned earlier, each suit has its own unique color palette, which could incorporate them into something that's been speculated for a very long time, a suit builder. Fellow Spidey fan and YouTuber TroyOboyo17 made a video describing on what he would want to see in a suit builder, and I completely agree with him. I'll leave that video in the description. Basically, he said that a Spidey suit comes down to 5 properties: the places where the red and blue connect, the web pattern, the front spider, the back spider, and the lenses. If Insomniac incorporates that with the color palettes, that would be amazing. I could actually add my own custom suit into the game, and that with photo mode would just be magnifique. Side missions. The last 2 games had fantastic side missions where you help pretty much anyone and everyone, making you really feel like a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And with the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app, I think they can build upon this even more. Since Miles and Peter are both going to be playable, this opens up a huge new realm of possibilities. There could be some side missions where you could play as one or the other, and they have different dialogue trees. An example being, if you tackle one as Peter, the person you're helping could say, "Hey, where's the guy in the black and red?" insinuating that some people like Miles more than Peter, and vice versa. Or there could be some where you can only play as Peter or Miles, or there are some where you could play as both, continuing with the dual team dynamic. And I actually have a really good idea for a side mission if you guys want to hear that. Cool. Basically, a person waves down Spider-Man. Either one, it doesn't matter. And basically what they need help with is that their cat is stuck in a tree. And all you gotta do is press triangle and you save the cat from the tree. That's it. No combat, no car chase, nothing. All you gotta do is do the simplest thing ever. Save a cat from a tree. Because I feel like a lot of side missions are like really grand with that kind of stuff, and just showing that this guy is, oh, he's just a person who likes to help people. I think that'd be really cool. An alternate one is pretty much similar to the very first game with a Black Cat side mission, pretty much just because the black suit is there and I think Black Cat thinks that the black suit is cool. Try saying that 5 times fast. Alright, moving on to Peter's actual love interest, Mary Jane Watson. MJ in the first game was very hit or miss to a lot of people, myself included, mainly in the form of her missions, where it was basically hide, distract a person, find the next place to hide, rinse repeat till you get to the end of the mission. And at her last level you get a taser, but that doesn't really change anything. So let's build something new from the ground up. MJ is an investigative journalist, so let's use that. Taking cues from the Batman Telltale series, I think her gameplay, if they choose to include it, is her pretty much finding evidence and clues and pretty much putting together what had happened. She's an investigative journalist. Let's use that. Boss fights and villains. In the teaser trailer, we got our first look at Venom and a hint of Kraven the Hunter. And at the end of Spider-Man Miles Morales, we get our first look at Dr. Connors, so it's obvious that the Lizard might make an appearance in the next game as well. In the last 2 games, a lot of the villains were mainly tech-based, so let's throw in villains who have actual superpowers. Mainly like Sandman, Molten Man, Swarm, and maybe even Morbius the Living Vampire. I don't really know what they would do. I just want to see more of a diverse set of villains. Maybe Mysterio is a villain and we go through like a trippy illusion level. And adding some of Miles' rogues to the game would also be good for him as a character. The person I'm thinking of particularly is Starling, who is actually Tiana Toombs, Vulture's granddaughter. Starling's relationship with Miles in the comics is very similar to Peter and Felicia's. Basically, it's like a will they won't they, she's a thief but she has a good heart. She could be introduced as a vigilante trying to be a hero, where in actuality she's actually stealing from the crime she's stopping to help pay for the Vulture's treatment, because in this universe he does have spinal cancer. Miles can even ask Peter for advice on what to do, and we can build even more backstory between him and Felicia. Peter even implied that in Miles Morales the Vulture is actually racist, and Tiana is a woman of color. So maybe she could be doing this as a motivation to try to get Vulture to accept her. But Miles can teach her that the only person you need to accept you is you, which would be a nice little lesson. And I don't think they need to bring back any villains from the last games into this one, because Spider-Man has enough rogues gallery at his disposal to pretty much fill out a bunch of games, so you can still keep it fresh. Well, that's about it. I want to thank you all for watching this Marvel Spider-Man 2 Brainstorm video. Be sure to like and subscribe for new videos just like this, and tune in for the next one, where I plan to talk about alternate suit ideas I have for both Miles and Peter in the next game. Roll the new outro!